It seems like this channel is slowly transforming into a Puniverse update channel, and honestly, I don't know how to feel about that still, but you guys seem to love these videos, so screw it, let's do another one. Now we all know that the Puniverse has been chugging along like crazy over the past month or so, with Blood and Honey 3 in production, and Pinocchio Unstrung officially getting a release date. But it's worth asking, what does the future for the Puniverse look like? Well, we just might have a few sneak peeks at our hands, because about a couple weeks ago, the Puniverse's official Instagram account held a Q&A for their fans, and I went and looked at all the submissions. And today, I've selected about a dozen responses, and we're gonna go over them right now and see what we might have in store over the next couple of years. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and if you do all of that, then you are officially groovy. Alright, so the first question is, what is the Mad Hatter like? And they responded with, Anora meets Maniac. So right off the bat, this is opening up a whole can of worms, because that is maybe the most random crossover of two movies I've ever seen. One's about a stripper who meets a wealthy Russian guy only for things to go south when his parents find out, and the other follows a deranged serial killer who murders women and puts their scalps on mannequins. Basically, neither of these movies have anything in common other than the fact that they are f***ing buck wild movies. So when combining the two, apparently that's what their Alice in Wonderland movie is gonna be like. Honestly, that's worth seeing alone in my opinion. The concept of that idea sounds like absolute madness, which for an Alice in Wonderland movie actually makes a lot of sense. And based on what I could find, it seems like Alice is going to be the Anora of the movie, whereas the Mad Hatter is going to be inspired by Frank Zito from Maniac. And this was further confirmed by TCU mastermind Scott Chambers.
Basically, Anora meets Maniac. So Alice works at an escorting agency called the White Rabbit, and the Mad Hatter gets obsessed with her, basically. So yeah, it'll be fun.
So yeah, that is certainly something to look forward to. Alright, next question. It looks like they just submitted a picture of Tintin, and they responded with, he's gonna be in the Puniverse, like it or not. Alright, so this pretty much cements the fact that all public domain characters aren't safe from the Twisted Childhood universe. So if you thought that they were only going to tackle the storybook characters, think again, motherfuckers. But hey, it does open up the discussion as to who else they might add to this franchise. Maybe Robin Hood, or Sherlock Holmes, or the characters from The Wizard of Oz, who are all in the public domain, by the way. It definitely seems like the possibilities are going to be endless, that's for sure. And who knows, maybe Tintin will get his own solo movie too. We shall find out. Alright, next question. Would you want to do a Little Mermaid horror movie? And they said, I don't think there's much to tell that there hasn't been done before. I actually appreciate these guys for holding back on this. There have been a whole bunch of horror adaptations of The Little Mermaid at this point, one of which I made a video about, so check that out if you haven't yet. And by the way, I'm not against these guys making a Little Mermaid horror movie. Really, just as long as they add enough unique visions to the story to make their version stand out. They've been doing a solid enough job with other properties, so it can be done for sure. But if they don't end up tackling it, it makes you wonder who that Mermaid in Blood and Honey 3 is. I mean, I can see them pulling a crazy twist like, oh, it's actually Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and the Mad Hatter morphed her into a mermaid, or some crazy theory like that. I'm just kind of bullshitting right now, but I think you get my point. Will Rabbit be annoyed at Tigger for most of the movie? And they said Rabbit's a unique guy. No clue what that could be alluding to, but in response to this guy's question, I'm pretty sure he's referring to the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh. No idea if he's referring to all versions of the character though, because I haven't read the original stories from the 20s, so please forgive me. But one of the most notable characteristics of Disney's version of Rabbit is that he was always getting frustrated over everything, and I won't lie, it kind of made him a bit unlikable. For example, at the end of the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Rabbit gets really annoyed with Tigger's bouncing, and so Tigger decides to make a promise never to bounce again, aka his favorite thing to do. And everyone feels bad for Tigger except for Rabbit. Like, goddamn, what a dick. I would definitely be curious to see if they're gonna incorporate that into Blood and Honey 3, but really it's just gonna make a rabbit unlikable. Which, to be fair, as one of the villains of the story, that would actually make a lot of sense. Maybe in the movie, if Rabbit gets tired of the bouncing, he'll slice Tigger's tail off. That would be pretty brutal. Alright, next question. What made you want to redesign Pooh and Friends for the second time? And they said they always want to be better than our last movie. So that pretty much settles the debate on why the crossbreeds got an upgrade, and I'm glad to see I was right. I've said this quite a few times on my channel already, but I do gotta give respect to the Twisted Childhood Universe team for always deciding to one-up themselves and keep putting in as much effort to make each installment better than the last. These guys are genuine independent filmmakers and not edgy teenagers trying to make some shitty homemade looking movie. And yes, while I have critiqued them a few times by now, the redesigns for Pooh and Tigger do look awesome. It's easily the best they've ever looked, and I understand wanting to try something new. It's gonna be a risky thing to pull off, but I do prefer something like that instead of being blatantly repetitive. So good on you, TCU team. Alright, next up, is Tinkerbell alive? And they said that she's unfortunately dead. So for context, in Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, Tinkerbell is not actually a fairy like some of you may have thought of, but instead she was like a drug addicted woman, and she was like Peter's servant but was also being held hostage by him. And towards the end of that movie, she starts to show sympathy for the kids who Peter kidnapped, and he doesn't like that, so he kills her right on the spot. I think he like cuts her arms off and like breaks her neck. It's pretty nasty. But one of my criticisms of Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare was that Tinkerbell was pretty underutilized. I didn't really think she added too much to the plot overall. And with her being dead, that pretty much just puts the nail in the coffin for me. Yeah, there's always a chance she could return for Puniverse Monsters Assemble, but me personally, I just don't see that happening. First of all, it would only make sense for the Puniverse to take place after Neverland Nightmare, given that the protagonists have already faced off Peter Pan. And that also means Tinkerbell would be dead by the time Puniverse rolls around. So maybe she has the power to get magically resurrected, but honestly, that just seems lame. With the crossbreeds, it kind of makes sense as to why they would get resurrected, but Tinkerbell is just a human being. A messed up individual for sure, but still fully human. So my theory is that for the Puniverse, Peter Pan is going to get a new henchman, but she's also going to be referred to as Tinkerbell. Or maybe they'll go full lore and actually introduce a fairy into the mix. But yeah, don't expect Tinkerbell to return for Monsters Assemble, or at least the version we saw before. Will the Teletubbies be in the TCU? Let's pray. Man, they're really trying to get everybody in this franchise, huh? Now, this one's a little interesting because the Teletubbies aren't in the public domain yet. I'm pretty sure they debuted in the late 90s, but that doesn't mean including them is entirely inevitable. There have been quite a few horror movies inspired by intellectual properties that are still copyrighted, including the Mean One and the Banana Splits movie. The reason why those were able to be made was because they fall under parody, which means that they were able to avoid copyright infringement. So far, the TCU guys have only tackled characters that fall under the public domain, meaning they wouldn't have to deal with copyright issues to begin with. So this would be a new step in the direction for them, but I'm sure they'll still be able to get away with throwing the Teletubbies into their lineup as well. Only time will tell, I guess. Oh my god, I just realized, could you imagine the TCU's take on the Baby Son? I would pay good money just to see that alone. Next question, is the movie budget for Winnie 3 more higher than Winnie 2? And they said yes. First of all, work on your grammar, pal, but second of all, I was actually correct on this as well. I mean, it was pretty obvious to begin with because, I mean, look at them, but this does bring up the question, what exactly is the amount for the budget? Given the last one cost around $500k to make, and with the more technically advanced stuff they're adding, I'm gonna assume that this budget's gonna be around $750k to even $1 million. That might be pretty high given how independent these movies are, but it's still pretty likely. Let me know what you guys think the budget of Blood and Honey 3 is gonna be. Alright, next up, I believe James Bond is public domain. Would you be up for a James Bond horror movie? And they said said for sure. So I actually just looked this up to be sure, and from what I saw, James Bond is actually not in the public domain as of when I'm recording this. The original source material isn't entering the public domain until 2035, so maybe a quick Google search would have been a good idea. But even if they do decide to make a James Bond horror movie, how is that gonna work? To me, what works about using characters like Winnie the Pooh, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, is that they're all fantasy characters, so I think that makes the stories a lot more flexible and interesting to work with. So it makes you wonder, how are they gonna make a horror movie about a secret spy who gambles and likes his martini shaken not stirred? Ideally, the only thing that I could possibly see them doing is a slasher film where the killer wears an outfit that kinda resembles James Bond, except that just sounds lame. I don't know what they could do with James Bond, but if the Puniverse is still going strong by 2035, maybe we'll find out. Although, as we talked about moments ago with the Teletubbies, they might not have to wait until then. Alright, we got one more question, and this is definitely a doozy, so here we go. Do you have anyone in mind for Alice? And they said Sabrina Carpenter. If it isn't already clear, this is obviously a joke. At least, I hope it is, because the chances of getting one of the biggest pop stars in a low-budget independent horror movie are 0 to none. Sorry, but that's just the truth. Unless the budget of this movie was around $1 bajillion, which we already know ain't happening. But that doesn't mean they can't get a well-known star to play this character, as we've seen lately with Robert Englund and Roger L. Jackson. So someone that comes to mind that I think would be an interesting choice for Alice would be McKenna Grace, which hey, there's another one she can add to her giant resume of franchises, but even she's too big for this kind of movie. Actually, you know what? One person I would nominate for this role is Catherine Corcoran, who's probably best known for being in the first Terrifier, and on top of that is an amazing human being. Also, I don't really see her getting a lot of really major work nowadays, so this could be an opportunity for a breakthrough role for her. I hope she achieves that one day because she's awesome. But there are a ton of options for this role, so I hope whoever they cast as Alice does a solid enough job as the character. Alright, that's pretty much all the questions I wanted to go over. So there's definitely a lot of interesting things to look forward to in the upcoming years of the Puniverse, but we all know the possibilities are endless. So what do you guys think? Do you want to see all these plans come to fruition? And what do you personally want to see included in the Twisted Childhood universe? I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments below. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. See ya!